Lovely members, we are back for another live Q&A, and tonight is going to be brilliant. I, for one, am really looking forward to it. Before we crack on, where are you watching from? I've seen a few already. Tasmania was one. James is in Tasmania. Tracy is in Canada. This is brilliant. Rue from Portugal. Martin from Wales. Paul from Kent's in the house. We've got Alan from Suffolk, Wally from Ireland, and keep putting it in there. And as you know, it's Guess the Album. There's tonight's album there. An absolute classic. Whoever guesses that first wins the prize of nothing, obviously. Right. We've got Giappini from Italy, Sue from New Zealand. So, here it's all coming through now. Virginia, we've got. And who have we got here? Great Waltham, Plymouth. Oh, welcome aboard, Pat. So listen, thanks for joining us once again. And I really appreciate you joining in with these sessions. Tonight is going to be really good. We have got street photography with Mr. Whisper, Bhatla. I hope I said that right. And it's going to be really, really good. Those people that went to the photography show and Miss Bell's talk, basically it's going to be it's that talk tonight, so it's going to be really, really cool. So we're going to bring Bal in a minute. You can ask questions as you go. If they're relevant to what's being said, feel free, ask them, whack them in the comments there. There's about a 20-second delay, so just be aware of that we see your comments about 20 seconds after you type them in. So just be aware of that. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A anyway. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to bring Bal in, and here he is. Hello, mate.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks, and thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it myself. So, Bal, introduce yourself, and then we'll get on with your presentation.
Oh well, first of all, thanks so much for having me here today, Mark. It's a real privilege to be here, and
Pleasure.
I am Bhatla, also known as Mr. Whisper on the internet, and I'm a very proud Fujifilm ambassador, and I love doing street photography.
Yeah, and that is, for anyone interested, coming across your screen now is Bal's details. That's his Instagram handle, Mr. Whisper, on Instagram there. Sorry, Bal, go and carry on.
So yeah, no, I've been doing street photography for about over a decade now, and I've worked with some incredible clients along the way. And alongside that, alongside working on campaigns, I do a lot of workshops, seminars, and photo walks, which I love doing. But tonight will be all about me sharing some highlights from my. Well, actually, shall I? Is the presentation on, Mark?
Yeah, I'm going to do it now. Yeah, I'm going to add. Just give me 1 second here, Bal. Okay, your presentation is on the screen, and for those people that just so that you know, we had a little bit of technical difficulties here, so Bal can't actually see what we're seeing, but we know what we're doing. We're professionals, so we're gonna crack on.
Yes. So if I don't react to any questions when they come up, that's because I can't see them at the moment. But it's really, really nice to hear that there's so many people from all over the world joining this evening. I'm always excited to share my story. So if it's all good, I'll get cracking.
Yep, you're good to go. You're good to go. You're all there.
Perfect. Thanks. So today, I've probably already given you my introduction, so there's no need going into that anymore. So we'll skip through that. But then I'm going to talk a little bit how my journey into photography began, followed by some career highlights, 3 of my favorite projects. I'd call them dream projects, to be honest, which I'm always excited to share. Followed by storytelling through photography and why that plays such an important role in my work. And then I want to give you guys some inspiration to get started on the streets. I think that's the thing I love doing most when doing these talks and workshops, is inspiring people to get out there with their camera and shoot. So hopefully you'll get a bit of that today.
Yeah.
And then obviously we're going to finish off with a Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
So I've already kind of mentioned this bit about being a Fujifilm ambassador, loving street photography, doing it for over a decade. And over that time, I've begun to specialize in low light. There's just the magic. There's something about the magic of the night that's drawn me to it. And at the time when I started, there weren't so many people doing it. So there was definitely an appeal to do that. And through photography, I've worked with some cool clients. But if you do want to check out any more of my commercial work, you can check out my website. If you want to see more of my personal stuff, you can see that on Instagram or YouTube, which I'm slowly resuscitating.
Mm-hmm.
So my journey into photography. So before I became a full-time photographer, actually, I worked in Adland, and I was a creative director. And my role was to be involved with all things digital. So this happened, around the same time when social media was was blowing up, basically. And all ad agencies wanted to know how to utilize it within their campaigns. So that was the task I had. I was really fortunate to be working at Samsung at the time. Very exciting place to be. And part of my role was investigating all the social platforms. So I was looking on Facebook, Twitter, blogs were really big at the time. And obviously Instagram came about. And, all the other platforms I was pretty rubbish at. But in order to practice what I preach, I had to have a go, understand how they worked, and see how I could use them for advertising purposes. But with Instagram, I felt this instant connection. It was simply based on uploading images. I was pretty good at making images and telling visual stories, which is kind of what I do. So there was this instant connection that was born. And anyone who's worked in Adlan will know that, you don't get much free time outside of work. But so my only opportunity to take photos was to and from work. So I would be taking commuters, using my mobile phone, and I got addicted. I just really loved it. I saw these stories. The underground's a very kind of intimate place. People have this very kind of it's my me time. So you get these really nice intimate moments, and it worked really well for me. It blew up. My following grew quite quickly on Instagram early on as a result. And, it got me thinking. But I remember coming home from work, and I'd get home from work at about 9 o'clock, and I'd have a look at the photos I'd just taken on the tube, and I'd start editing them. And then, before I knew it, it'd be 11 o'clock and I'd have to go to work the next day. So I was thinking, how can I make this stuff work for me? It would be amazing if I could get some clients off it. I see some other people working with brands. I know how to work with brands, but how can I translate that through Instagram? So I just noticed that, back in the day, Instagram wasn't that, it didn't have all your bio details that you do today, like email addresses. And there was actually no way for anyone to get in touch. So I simply put my email address under my name. And lo and behold, that I think it was the next day or that week, clients started to get in touch. I think it was Jaguar, which was my first client to get in touch. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. Sent me off to Goodwood for a shoot, followed by Adidas. But, it really got me thinking that, I could do this full time. And so I spoke to the boss, which was my wife, and said, maybe I could take a few months off and really give it my all, because this could be something that I could regret in the future. And it's, these opportunities don't come very likely. So, and she was like, okay, I think you should go for it. It's pretty special what's going on. So, I continued working on with my smartphone for a good few years. And like I said, I worked with Lonely Planet, which was incredible.
All using a smartphone, Bal, was it? Or
Yeah. For the first, I think 3 or 4 years, I was just using a smartphone, because that was another thing that I never really wanted to get into photography. It was always part of my trade as a creative director, knowing good photographers and respecting their art. But for me, it was really scary. It was very technical, and I found my love for photography through a smartphone, because it felt like everyone who was on Instagram was just uploading through their phone. So it was a very even playing field, and it just felt very kind of just freeing. I just felt liberated is the word that I'm looking for. I just felt that there was none of these kind of constraints, and everyone was just out there making really nice stuff. So I really enjoyed it. I got into it, and then I had an incredible opportunity with a creative partner of mine, Robert Greaves. We went off and shot the Brazil World Cup, and did all the stadiums, and that was for Adidas. Incredible, and again shot all on my smartphone. And then it was when and it was funny, because when we arrived at the first media meeting for the World Cup, everyone pulled up with their massive flight cases, equipment, and there was me and my mate with our smartphones, little extra chargers, and our backpacks ready with our additional lenses and tripods. But it was just such, like I say, a liberating time to be creative, making visual stories with whatever the device may be. So I was just really enjoying being as creative as I could with that tool, which is essentially what it's still about to this day. As long as the tool can, do what I need it to do, I'm happy.
Mm.
So this brings me on to when like the transition like dawned on me, like why should I, you know, move to a bigger camera? But I worked on this incredible project with Lacoste Live. And after the campaign, they got back to me and they said, hey, it would be really, we love the photos you took for the campaign and we'd love to use them across Europe for in store. And I was like, wow, I've never had that kind of opportunity. Wow, I've never seen a check that big. That sounds amazing. Where do I sign? And then, you know, lo and behold, the photos were taken on an iPhone 5 or something. So you couldn't blow them up more than A5. So the contract was kind of ripped up. And it was that day I went out and I was like, right, this is never going to happen to me in my career again. I need to fix up, get myself a proper camera. And so rang up my best mate and he was like, yep, look, I've just done the transition from like sold all my Canon gear and like got all the Sony stuff. So we headed to the camera store and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a Sony. And the guy pulled out the Sony and I was just like, oh, just didn't feel any kind of connection with it. And then he was like, oh, this camera's just been released. And it was the Fujifilm X-T1.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and I was like, that's what a camera's supposed to look like. You know, it's got all the dials on it.
Right. Because it did go back to retro design, the X-T1. I remember when it came out. Yeah.
Yes. So it just like I was drawn to it immediately. I thought that I think, you know, is what a camera should look like. Plus, I'm pretty fashion conscious, so I consider my cameras like a piece of jewelry, and I was like, that's going to look pretty cool when I'm wearing it as well. So being a street photographer, having your camera with you all the time, it's pretty important what the aesthetic is as well. So I really enjoyed the look, and so that's where my connection with Fujifilm started with the X-T1, and it's been a crazy ride. I have, you know, along the way, I have had the opportunity to work with brands that have, you know, been able to see how street photography can be used within their campaigns and their commercial world. And me being, you know, from with a creative background, I love the challenge of every new brief and seeing how I can bring that into my visual language. So I've been lucky enough to work with, you know, so many different genres of photography. Like I've worked on car photography, I've worked with alcohol brands, I've worked on fashion brands, I've worked with the government, mentoring students to understand the value of creativity. I've worked on film sets. I've just worked on a really like lovely variety of stuff, which I still pinch myself for every day. And like I said, enjoying every challenge that comes my way and seeing how street photography can be connected to tell their stories. Which brings me on to like what we're talking about today. I'm going to be sharing 3 of my real dream projects with you guys. And I'm not just going to be sharing the final results with you. I want to give you an insight into my workflow. So from, you know, how I take each campaign from inception through to execution. So this Rogue One, a Star Wars story with Lucasfilms and Disney. Absolute dream project, as you can imagine. And I really couldn't believe it when this brief came through. So this is a highlighted version of the brief. And honestly, I nearly fell off my chair when I was reading through this. I scanned through it, and my first reaction was that I thought it was a joke. So I immediately arranged a call with the agency to ensure that this was all legit. And after they had kind of calmed my nerves and told me, yes, this is all legit, I was totally on board. I mean, it had all the ingredients that, you know, any street photographer would love to work on, or some, especially for me, it just had everything in there. Just doing a short project inspired by Star Wars. I mean, who doesn't want to work with Disney or Lucasfilms on something that's incredible? 10 shots in my typical style. That's a very big draw for me, especially when I know clients have done their research. You know, sometimes you get these really random briefs where you're like, have you actually seen my work? And, you know, the brief is just completely off brand for myself. So that was promising. Props from the new movie, that was cool. Really nice to be able to use those. And I knew that would have a special meaning for all the fans, especially. And then the next point, this was really big for me, being able to have any time with Greg Fraser, who is like an incredible cinematographer. And if you haven't heard of him, he's done like Mandalorian and more recently Dune and Dune 2. So his work is like tip top. So being able to get any kind of insight from him was incredible. And then lastly, the only concern I had, which, they kind of covered, which was fair enough. But I was concerned. I was not a Star Wars fan, so I didn't know the Star Wars story. And that's key, because back in the day when you do photography and it wasn't on social media, there was no kind of backlash to it. So you could come up with any concept and it would kind of just fly. And, you didn't really know what people thought. But now in the days of social media, you have to be really clear, especially when you're working on something like Star Wars. Like, the fan base treat the storyline like a religion, basically.
Yeah.
So,
I am one of them people, pal.
There we go. You see,
I'm one of them. I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan. Yeah, that's right. And I'll pull all the storylines apart. And yeah, I'm one of them.
Exactly. So you were in the back of my mind when I was thinking about this, and I was like, I don't want to do you guys any disservice. So my role was to work really, really collaboratively with the agency, because they knew all the storylines and they would be able to proof all my concepts to ensure that they made sense within the Star Wars universe. So this was the brief, and I like to distill the briefs down to something as simple as possible, so I know what I'm working with. And it's basically promote the launch of a Rogue One, a Star Wars story with a street photography series set within the Star Wars universe, but in today's world.
Right. Yeah,
that takes a minute to get your head around.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around it now.
Yeah. So it took me a moment, but I was like, challenge accepted. We've only got 2 weeks to go, so let's get moving. So the first step in the project was basically for me to look at visual similarities between my work and the upcoming film. So the client put together this mood board for me and dropped in some screenshots. And then we started to see how there were echoes of like the, oh my gosh, now, see, this is where I'm going to get caught out. It's the Rebels and the Empire. The Empire. So you could see the similarities between the Empire, which are the images on the left side, and the Underground, which was really nice because I spent so much time shooting on the Underground. And then on the right-hand side, there was this kind of Darth Vader shot with the round circles, which we kind of echoed towards low light at the London Eye. And then again, we've got these kind of car park scenes, which felt very kind of where the spaceship hangars might hang out. Yeah. So we were looking at these similarities. I was looking at as many of the trailers as I could, just trying to pick up as much of the story as I can and pick up, just get within the Star Wars world.
Yeah.
So then we had a meeting with Greg Fraser, as I mentioned, and he highlighted how they had actually used Canary Wharf as the base for the Empire. So at night, as you can see in some of the images there, they would like get everyone in. All the stormtroopers had their Oyster cards out, rush through the barriers, and in they would go to set up base, cover all the underground signs, and make work of that. Then on the other hand, whenever they were shooting the Rebels, they would use a completely different environment as opposed to the Empire base. Like anyone who's been to Canary Wharf knows it actually feels like a spaceship anyway. So
it's very metal, concrete, grey, slick, tidy. Whereas I get it. Being in the Rebels, you're in the rough side of things,
Exactly.
So
that's exactly it. You pointed it out. It was like they were a complete contrast to those guys, and we're basically going to be looking for something a little bit more gritty, like you were saying. So I went out scouting locations and thinking of ways how we can really layer the images to start telling our stories. Now, this was a really cool little scouting location because I was out in the real world looking for these pockets or glimpses of Star Wars. So it was really fun. And, you know, the first location on the left, people might know it. It's one in London, close to London Waterloo. And it's a tunnel that's full of graffiti. And so it's a prime location I thought that we could use for some of the rebel activities. And then again, you know, the next image, which was this futuristic like tunnel. And this is simply a tunnel which is connected to a car park. So finding all these like mundane places, but giving them a storyline and a narrative, really bringing them to life. Then layering on top of that, I thought it would be really cool if on scene we could build some props and stuff. So if we're going to have any rebel scenarios, let's build some posters, let's create those. And then if we've got any Empire stuff going on, perhaps we can use like stuff that we're used to in every day, but then employ like the Star Wars universe again. So creating a Metro rap, you know, that people will be reading on their way home. So having a little bit of fun with it. And, you know, at this point, the client did say to me, they were like, oh, okay, that, you know, we like the idea of the props. However, we can just, you know, do those all in post-production. Surely we can just do those all in Photoshop. And I was like, you know what, if we're going to do this in Photoshop, we might do the whole thing in Photoshop, because, you know, me being a bit of a street photography purist. I want everything to be in frame, shot through my camera. And then we'll edit it in post for some color grading, but we won't be doing any Photoshop other than that. So they agreed to that, which was cool. And I came up with 10 concepts. Sadly, due to the fact that we could only get the props for a day rather than a few days, we had to cut it down to 5 concepts. And this meant us running across London with quite a bigger team than I'm used to. I'm used to being quite nimble, being myself and the subject and maybe one client.
So did you have actors with you then coming with you
Yes, certainly. So within the concept, so for the one we did at the South Bank, we needed, I think that was there was one actor, but we had 2 actors with us. But the security guard actually doubled as one of the actors in one of the scenes. And then I was actually one of the actors in one of the scenes. And then, so yeah, we tried to keep the team as light as possible. But there was a client there. There was 2 people from the agency and a security guard and a driver. So we were running across London to make sure we got everything in the day, because we only had the props for them for that limited time. So here's the first image that we got, which I was really happy with. We used the original Stormtrooper helmet.
Yeah, you didn't get to keep any, did you? You didn't swipe any, put them in your bag.
Like if I was to like be able to crop out just maybe a few centimeters, the security guard's foot is right there.
Right.
He was so paranoid that someone was going to come and grab it and run off. So it was placed very gently on the floor. But I got to position it well. But the thing is, you know, I'd done, like I said, had scouted the location, had come in a few times. Client had seen it, they'd agreed to it, and it was perfect. But on the day, you know, you plan things as much as you can. On the day we arrived, this is a tunnel which has no cars on it or no roads, but it was full of roadworks. There was a big drill at the end. There were construction workers everywhere. And you know, you just couldn't have planned it. And but this worked out to our advantage, you know, to be honest, because the guys who were working, they're all in these orange high vis, and you know, the agency guy was like, well, you know, that's what the X-wing fighters wear. So if we blur them out, I can make them look like X-wing fighters who've just beaten up a stormtrooper and he's joined the rebellion, or they've just beaten him up. So the concept came together there and then on the place, and we called it Aftermath. And that was shot with my XT2 and my 35mm. So this was the second photo that we made in Canary Wharf. And for this photo, it's called Battle Station. And obviously the concept is here. It's a stormtrooper. He's had a busy day at work and he's on his way home, reading the metro as you do. And here you can see the metro in place. And this is what the concept was for. And for this shoot, anyone who's ever shot around Canary Wharf, you'll know it's incredibly difficult. You get kicked out on the spot as soon as they see you with a camera, basically. So as we arrived, the team were moving around. Security guards immediately asked us what we were up to. We just said we were out walking around doing a scouting journey. And then so at that point I said, look, it's best if me and only the model goes downstairs, gets the shot, and then quickly gets out of here, because any other way we're gonna get caught, and it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, because you need a permit for around the Canary Wharf. Even if you're doing it as an amateur, you need to apply for a permit. Yeah.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
And I take it you didn't have them permits then. Didn't have them permits in place.
I was surprised Disney, were happy to go all stealth.
Yeah.
And I think potentially back in those days, it was a bit of a grey area on social. People didn't know what, the law applied to it, whereas it clearly should. In those days, it was just a very grey area. And I remember, things like having rights to people's photos and things becoming more of an issue only over the last 8 years, I'd say, which is still a long time, but very early on, it was a really grey area. So hence brands like Disney and myself could do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then another one we made, this was done first thing in the morning, actually. This was one on the South Bank at the skate park where you can do graffiti. So again, we got a graffiti artist to start painting a stormtrooper for us, stuck our posters up in the background to give it some propaganda vibes. Here it was just me catching one of these rebellions, spraying some propaganda against the empire.
It's a rebellion, Banksy.
Yes, exactly. That's the one. And I tell you what, if you ever go there to shoot, I guess it's kind of hit and miss, but sometimes the skateboarders aren't very inviting, and sometimes they really are. On this particular morning, I think they weren't very happy with our presence.
No.
So the fourth photo we made, this was called The Hangar, and again, a concept of one of the X-Wing fighters, which is me, getting off my X-Wing and then taking a little selfie on the way home. Really simple concept. And this one was actually born from something I had taken on my feed probably a few months prior to this. And the client saw it, and I think, they were attracted by the yellow framed mirror and the grid on the back, the big yellow lines, which looked like a hangar for all their spaceships. Again, we did have a little debate about all the cars in the background and if I could Photoshop them out. And I was like, no, that's all part of the story. It's this mixed world that we got to live in, and we can't start Photoshopping X-Wing fighters in the background. And then this was called The Passing, just like I think it was two kind of guys from the Empire just having a nonchalant passing in one of their spaceship tunnels. But we really liked this location, so we wanted to use it. And again, we planned everything, been there, checked it out. But on the day we arrived, as it was so close to Christmas, if you look closely, you can see like there were Christmas lights, and they were all switched on, which completely destroyed the spaceship vibes. So, and it was busy because it was Christmas. So this is the footfall coming from the car park into the shopping center. So we waited and we waited at one end of the tunnel. We slowly kind of checked out and saw where the light switch was situated, and it was pretty high up. But thankfully, we had the big bodyguard, who's the guy in the black. And so when we found our moment, I think it took about 45 minutes, very close to closing time. We ran down there, switched the lights off, and then we got the guys to pass. And then I shot them in a fast burst and caught the moment that we needed.
Wicked. Yes. What shopping centre? Where was this? This ain't Canary Wharf.
No, this one's in Kingston, actually. This is
Right.
I think it's the now called the Fenwick Centre in Kingston.
Right.
So yeah, this is that was very convenient for me because I live quite local to there. So and it is so cool because these things, I've grown up, I've been there, and I've seen them, and suddenly now we're using them as like spaceship environments. So it's so cool, really, really cool.
Yeah.
So an added bonus to the project was they really loved the photo series that I created, and the response to them on Instagram was really, really warm and welcoming. So they invited me to firstly the Friends and Family premiere, which took place at the Tate Modern. And my role there, I was blown away. The whole place was just incredible. It was, I was starstruck, to say the least. I think it was my second time. It's probably my second time shooting celebrities. But being confronted with these guys, I was the first guy on scene who had to get the cast shot before all the press and media. And I remember, can't quite see them, but to the sides of all the stars, all the press and media just being held back until I get my shot, which was a moment I'll never remember because I never had people swearing.
Everyone's looking at you going, he's the most important photographer. All the paparazzi are
Who
outside.
is that idiot with the camera, and why is he there? Is probably more closer to the truth, I feel. But yeah, these are moments that I will, never forget. And then they proposed to me. They said, look, if you can come up with something, I think I had a day or something to come up with it. We can give you like 5 minutes or 2 minutes with each individual cast member. If you can come up with something to come, for their portrait that we can use then on socials. And I was like, the only thing I could come up with was like, if those cast members who have a figurine, they could hold their figurine and then I would take their portrait with it. Client was like, yeah, that's cool. We've got the figurines here. We don't have one for this person or this person. And this person and this person's agent said no. So yeah, well, I ended up getting a few of these guys, which was very special, having like one-to-one time with them. And then, again, another bonus was the fact that at the Leicester Square premiere, my images were printed and exhibited there. So just nice. Really, really cool. And I thought, I can't wait to work with them next. This has been a great project. And you know what brief they gave me after this one? It was for Bambi.
Well, it's a job.
Yes, it was indeed. So my next highlight was working on another dream project, which was with Netflix UK on Narcos. Have you seen that, Mark?
I haven't actually. Everyone says watch. It's one of them that I just haven't got round to, really. Yeah.
All right, so it's a really, really good show, and this is another one which was a pinch yourself moment, because this brief arrived just as I finished watching season 1, and it was a moment where I had to call the agency, make sure you are really Netflix, right? This isn't a scam. But yeah, the brief ultimately boiled down to 2 days shoot in Colombia, Bogota, on set, making portraits of the hero cast and cast members of Narcos. So being a huge fan, I was like, yep, sign me up. Very, very excited. And I think this was actually my first shot with celebrities. So I was nervous that it was going to be my first celebrity shoot. And then also the fact that this project got moved a couple of times because they were having problems with safety issues. I think some of the scouts had got kidnapped by some narcos because they weren't happy with the way that Netflix were monetizing their story. And then eventually they were like, yeah, if you're still up for it, here's a contract, sign your life away, but you will be escorted by bodyguards at all times. So that was an experience in itself. And eventually we did head out to Bogota, and it was there was 3 photographers with me who joined. I was the only one from the UK. The other guys were from Copenhagen and Spain. And I just remember thinking, this was a completely different kind of ball game to other briefs, because I didn't have any preparation. It was going to be me just in a room trying to make sense with a scenario, with a celebrity, trying to make like as close to a Netflix scenario as I could. So here's what I came up with, basically. So this guy is Pedro Pascal. He's been in loads of stuff, and he plays Javier Pena, who's one of the main detectives in Narcos. And he was an absolutely charming guy. And my role here was to capture him in his detective role, in his essence of being like this Narcos cop. So this came out perfectly for me. Just positioned myself quite low, asked him to look straight into the camera, and like he knew what he was doing. I didn't have to direct him, really.
Yeah.
And then again, just got him to switch poses, get something a bit more focused, but not looking at the camera, and just making sure he was firmly in character. And again, he did, absolutely perfect for the task in hand, absolutely perfect for the brief that I had to do. And then it's always good. This was probably the first one I did, but it's always good to break the ice with whoever you're working with. So it was good that I got to him to crack a smile. And then when he recognized my accent, he was like, "Oh yeah, actually, I'll be coming to London soon. I'll be coming there for some filming in a couple of months." And I was like, "Oh great, what's that on?" And he was like, "Oh, just this thing called Game of Thrones." So I was like, "Oh, okay, just that little chestnut, hey?"
Yeah.
He was really cool. His partner in crime, literally, but the other detective, his partner detective, was Boyd Holbrook, lovely guy. And again, we had him on set, but it was kind of what we wanted to do. Well, me and the other photographers, we noticed that he kept stepping out for a sneaky cigarette. And we thought, you know what, why not try getting some shots while he goes out for a cigarette? Although we've been instructed by Netflix not to bother them outside our interview time, maybe we can try that. So we all kind of went out and tried our luck, and he was so like welcoming and inviting for us all. He let us take portraits, and again we had a good little conversation to break the ice. So really happy with the way these couple of portraits turned out. And then it was time for the big man himself. This is Wagner Moura, who plays Pablo Escobar. And sadly, he'd lost his moustache, which is basically, I felt, what makes him Pablo. But he'd finished filming a few months ago, so it was fair enough. But it was just incredible to be able to meet him and get a photo with him. And this is one for like the Fujifilm gang. And I remember I was shooting with my X-T1 at the time, and the other guys, what were they using? Maybe a Sony, Canon. Well, it wasn't Fujifilm, basically. And I pulled up with my X-T1 to take my photo. We only had limited time, so let's get your shots, get out. And pulled up with my X-T1, and he was like, "Oh, hold on!" Gets up from behind the chair, comes over, has a look. Goes, "Oh, is this analog? Is this film?" And I was like, No. This is a film camera. He's like, "This is a digital camera." And he was like, "Oh, that's incredible." So it immediately broke the ice with him, and that was just really nice for me. Got some portraits in here. Then again, managed after doing that, we stepped outside, took some photos, and also got a selfie with him, which was really cool. Got to do that. You might notice a pattern here, how I try and get selfies in most of my campaign stuff.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Another highlight of my career was I was briefly president of the United States. You probably you
do a good job.
Actually not. This was obviously a highlight again. We got to see some of the amazing sets that they built, and we got to have a look, and it was incredible. I mean, if I got to build sets like this for my work, it would just be amazing. It just shows you what another world like Hollywood lives in and stuff. So really exciting to see all that.
Yeah.
And then last but certainly not least, and much more recently, this was just a couple of months ago, Fujifilm invited me to launch the X106. And considering the hype around the predecessor, I was really up for it. And I was lucky enough to get my hands on it in early November. And just really, really happy to use it. The only kind of concerns that I did have with it, I hadn't used one of the kind of this format camera before, and the fact that it was f2, and most of my kit are prime lenses, which are f1.4 or 1.2s. So I was like, how's an f2 going to perform at night? And it was the day that they gave it to me. I was doing one of my workshops, and two of the guys pulled up with the X100-5s, or the X100Vs, as everyone called it. And so I kept a very close eye on them and how their cameras were performing through the workshops, especially as I was guiding them through the settings. And by the end of the workshop, I was like, okay, this guy's going to perform. I wasn't concerned, basically. So
yeah,
really excited to kind of take on the project.
Yeah. Was it? What do they? Are they? Do you prefer them better than the XTs? The XT5, or XT4, whatever. Or
no, I think it's got a different place for me. With the XT range, I've got a love affair with the XT range. I mean, from XT1 to 5, I've got them all. Would never sell them. And so when I was presented with this project, it got me thinking. And Fujifilm are very clear that they don't want you to work on stuff, that you don't believe in. They don't want you to make up stuff and be like, oh, it's a great camera when it's not a great camera, or honestly, it does this when it doesn't. So that's one of the things I really respect about them, and I'm so happy to work with them so closely on. So for me, it definitely served a different purpose, which I didn't know at the time. I was really focused on going out with this tiny machine, which was supposed to be like have everything the XT5 has inside.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can go out with an XT5 in that size body and do my work, because I know the f2 works. Like this is going to be like so exciting, like so much fun. So I was really up for it. But the thing, well, yeah, I'll say it now. Where now, I don't know if you can see it. I've got the X100 6 behind me. I'm fortunate enough to get the limited edition still boxed, because I haven't had a moment to get it, but I'm still also accessorizing as we do. And so for me, the place for that is going to be as sadly the low light days are numbered now, or otherwise I'm going to be going out at midnight to shoot. So I'm looking forward to going out with the 6 in the summer days, really, up in my daylight game, and having the freedom of not worrying about lenses, and, just being very playful with it, because I know it's got the image quality. And, I've worked with it for like 4 months now, and that's why I had to have it myself afterwards, because I know where it sits within. It's got a clear differentiation between the XT5 and the XT series. But yeah, these are just very special. A lot of people describe them like that. And as I talked through the project, my learnings for it were like, I was like, this is why I really love it. So I'm going to break it down for you for sure.
Okay.
So it was. So the brief was a global brief. So this was going to be sent to HQ in Japan, and they wanted 15 images. They wanted to avoid Christmas. And like I said, this was like early November. So Christmas was slowly building in London. There were lights slowly coming up, and it was going to be more and more harder to avoid those. Location wise, they gave me a choice. I had the choice to go anywhere in Europe to showcase, its low light capabilities. And sorry, I didn't actually, they wanted me to showcase how well the new 6 features performed in low light. And that was mainly because the engineers in Japan were really proud of they'd managed to squeeze 6 stops of IBIS into this tiny body. So that was the real thing here. We were trying to show how well that performed, and it definitely proved itself during the time. So going back to some of the brief. So location, anywhere in Europe, it was up to me. No faces. If I had any faces, obviously I'd have to use model release forms. And then there was a phase 2, which was a launch video. And as I just talked about, whenever Fujifilm give you something, they were like, look, if through the process of taking these photos, you're not enjoying the camera, then you don't have to do the launch video. And then potentially there's a phase 3, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So very exciting, really up for it. And this is how I approached the project myself. So 15 images, that was totally cool, comfortable with being able to deliver those in time for Christmas. Avoiding Christmas, so that meant actually the 5-6 weeks that I had was probably more like, if I could do it in the next 2 weeks, it would probably be to my advantage, because then, as I said, less Christmas lights, less Christmas environments to deal with. Location, I wanted to go to Soho. I wanted to go to somewhere that I knew had plenty of narratives going on, lots of beautiful scenarios to capture. It's my stomping ground, so I knew it would be the perfect place to test out the camera. And then no faces. I decided on one of my previous campaigns, I wanted to use models because of time constraints. So I said, look, in case we don't get the right characters in place, it would be better for us to use models. But in this case, where I had a lot more creative freedom, I was like, no, I'm going to go and do my thing. However, I'm just going to go a bit abstract. I'm going to avoid faces by layering and using various techniques that I use. And so everything was like seeming like it was going to be like a dream. The only thing that I kind of oversight was the fact that it was completely new to me. I just considered I've used the XT series, and this is another Fujifilm camera, but the form factor made a massive difference. It was so much smaller, and it didn't have as much grip as I was used to. The dials, two of I think the ISO and the shutter speed are in one dial as opposed to separate dials. So, and then there's not as many shortcut buttons. So the first few times I went out, I was missing moments, and I was starting to get a little bit worried. But as you do with anything, you really have to. I liken to it, for me, moving from iPhone to Android. The first few times I thought, oh, no, this Android's not for me. I'm going back to iPhone. But once I gave it a real go, I was just like, this is so much better. It's like I got comfortable with it. I really understand, the OS. I got to grips with that, understood how I could use it. Wrist strap made it felt much simpler. Just using everything I could to make it feel as comfortable as I could. So I think it was on about my fourth journey out with it on a night mission, it really started to click. So I was that's when I was really happy with it.
Yeah, cool.
And then so here's the results of some of the photos that I made with it. So this is the first one with the X100-6, and again in my favorite, taken around Soho, and just something really beautiful about her smile caught behind the glass. I think that was really nice. Works for me because there has a lot of emotion coming out of there, plus the fact her face was guarded or kind of distorted through the windows. So no model release required.
Yeah. Nice.
And then this shot here, which again, just composing using these beautiful neons. As you can see, it's self-titled On Dean Street in Soho. And using the reflection of the car to add some abstract elements, and then waiting for the right subject to come in. I've got one in the front, one in the middle, on the left, and one in the middle. And just really happy with the composition, the tone, and the mood that sets. But nice. Then, while I was shooting this, I kind of spotted, like, to the right of this frame, there's a window there, and I spotted some movement. So I kind of moved in closer, and that actually became my next shot, which was really nice, capturing just these echoes again of this silhouette. I love the fact that it's like echoed 1 or 2 or 3 times, and then there's someone else who's sitting very sharply. You can see just his ear through the mosaic of the window. And then this was probably another one of my favorites. This was taken on Piccadilly Circus, probably one of my favorite locations because there's just so much going on, and it's beautifully lit. But there was a lot of moving parts to this shot. So basically, if you've been to Piccadilly Circus or you've probably seen it on TV, the screens are constantly changing. So the first thing I was looking for was like, what's the best thing that's going on the screen that I can work with? Because here I really wanted to use the reflections down on the cars that were passing by. And so I knew that I kind of found the perfect spot where when the traffic lights hit red, I can compose the Piccadilly lights within the windows or a bonnet or a boot. And what I worked out, or what I know, is on a black car because they're going to reflect the most. So eventually I saw this beautiful, well, it was really kind of, I like the fact that you have this angel holding a gun and she's all dressed in black on the screen with this red background. And then I was just hoping that everything would come together, which it did, luckily. Probably took about 35 minutes, trial and error of different cars and shapes coming. But when this one came along, I love the fact that it had the full arched window framing everything. Put that in focus with her holding the gun central. Obviously, the lights were red, so I had a little bit of time to move back and forth, but didn't want the LED, the big Piccadilly screen to change. So
yeah, it's really nice. Really nice.
Thank you. And again, this is a real hotspot, but probably some of the most beautiful lights, neon lights that I like to play with in Soho. And here, just trying to take a little bit of a different take on it. Been to this spot 100 times. I take lots of people there for my workshops because it's just a really inspiring location. And for me, it was just trying to get a different take. And I saw something new on this occasion where instead of focusing on the neons, I'd focus on the eyes being on the reflection of this hood. It's on the hood of a car. So again, utilizing as many props as I can to compose like an interesting narrative within the streets.
And the rain works as well, doesn't it? The water.
The detail is, I mean, I soon learned that after, I think on the fourth trip, I was like, I'm only going to go out when it rains because it was just adding so much more. And I know that generally, but it just really helped with when I was putting this set together. I was like, oh, why are these three looking so much more special than the others? Because they're wet. So that's the thing I employed after that. Another shot that I was happy with, and this, these photos come in the most surprising moments. I was just in the queue, waiting for a latte in the central cafe, and I turned back and I saw the security guard standing there, and he was just silhouetted, but just his white collars were showing. So that drew me to the scene immediately. And then as I saw people passing through the front door from the outside, I noticed that blue line, and I was like, if I can capture someone walking past, I think that will finish off the frame for me quite nicely, or give it a bit more of a balanced composition. And then lo and behold, the security guard kept staring at me because I was staring at him. And then this guy, he did eventually come in, but he was kind of looking at the signs and stuff. So caught him in the blue light with the guy nicely silhouetted. And I like.
Did the security guard say anything, or was he just thinking, "What's that weirdo doing for camera?"
Yeah, I think I had my camera out long enough to be like fiddling around and assuming like I wasn't taking photos, but just checking photos. Where in fact I was composing the frame and making sure I got enough red off this, this bollard on the right to complement the red behind the security guard. So I was just composing the frame. So he was perfectly looking at me. It worked out to my favor.
It did.
And this one I was just passing by, but what I really liked was the fact that he was deep in thought, and there was these were Christmas lights, but I was able to use them subtle enough. They were just supposed to look like his thoughts in action, so like very subtle little thought bubbles coming out of his head. So I kind of when as I passed, I saw it, had to take a few steps back and forth to recompose. He was lost in his world. He didn't even see me for a second. So that was great.
Lovely picture.
Thank you. And this was another one I caught in Piccadilly Circus. As I walked past, saw the puddle, always working with the reflections and puddles, but really enjoyed the fact that if anyone walked close enough, I could chop them in half. So basically, half of them existed in the puddle, and the other half in the real world, which I really liked. And and then the little spots of lights around it.
Really cool.
And then, yeah, just me getting, this one was taken in Liverpool Street, rush hour, really trying to capture the vibe of the hustle and bustle of the city, and really enjoying the wider lens. I mean, really being.
What is the focal length of it, Bal?
It's a 23 mil. So
that's just fixed, isn't it? You can't. Is it a fixed lens, or can you can change it? Yeah,
they do have some adapters, so you can change it into a telephoto and a macro. So two little lens adapters. I've got to look into it myself. But so that's like a 35 equivalent on a full frame, I believe. But yeah, I was really enjoying capturing that. What you see is what you get. And for me, someone who uses probably like the equivalent of an 85, my 56, my precious 56, or 33, I'm used to much kind of longer lengths. So being able to capture the whole scene for me was just like opening up a new chapter for me. Hence, I was like, yeah, I'm really sold on this now. I need to get one. So, and then this one happened as do most of my favorite photos. When I'm putting my camera away and going home, I just see a moment and I'm like, oh, I love that. I just love the way her feet, her shoes were perfectly in focus, crossed. Her job is done for the day, and like, yeah, we've got some nice depth of other people heading home. So
and they look really crisp, like in the focus point of them. The lens on it must be absolutely superb.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's just so it's really tack sharp when it needs to be, and then if you want to give it a bit more of a like softer glow, you can put little filters on it and stuff. But I prefer having the sharper image as a raw, and then I'll play with it what I need to do in post rather than maybe putting a filter on first. But yeah, I mean, I was probably got some strange looks from people behind me, but I took a few photos at different heights, and this one proved to be the best one. And I was, the screen's really small, and I know it's the case with all cameras. Like you see it on the LCD, and then you get home and you're like, oh, it's actually not what I thought. Yeah, this one was it was what I was seeing on the screen, and then coming home, it was there. I was just like, this is really promising. So obviously, after that experience, it was time to do the testimonial video. How am I doing for time?
We're running over a bit actually, Bal. So, but you're all right. People are still no one's dropping off yet. So
okay, I've probably got about another. I'll crank it up. Sorry everyone, but see, I do get into this stuff.
Right. No one's left yet. I could see the numbers. No one's dropping, so you're good. You're still good.
All right, cool. So it was time for the testimonial video. Delivered the images, and I was like, hell yes, I'm on board. I love the camera, so I do want to further tell my story. And to your point of asking me kind of where did it sit and why would I kind of want it, I was like, over the process, I created those beautiful images, which I was happy with. It's very rare that I'm happy with my own images, but I was very proud of those ones. And so I wanted to tell the story of the X100-6, exactly how I'd experienced it. And I'd made videos for Fujifilm in the past, and the one that's playing on screen at the moment was the one we made for the XT5 in Stockholm. And I'd chosen Stockholm as a European destination, like I said, but for this one it was Soho. And so there was learnings from that video, understanding kind of what brand components needed to go in. But at the same time, I didn't want it to have the same pace that the normal Fujifilm videos have. And I know that's because, they have their brand guidelines and so forth. And the opportunity and the special thing working with the UK team is the fact that they give me a lot more creative freedom. So if it's not a global project, they'll give me a little bit of license to play. So I put this mood board together and I said to them, look, I think we should really bring to life the story of the the 6, because it is a very special camera. And then, so if I'm not sure if anyone knows The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross.
I love it, mate. It's just therapeutic when you watch. Yeah, Bob Ross. His paintings actually sell for quite a lot of money now. You know, the originals. Yeah.
So he is all I could think about when I was out, not in a bad way, just that joy. When he explained the joy of painting, I was like, working with this new camera, that's the X100 is just like, for me, it's literally it's the joy of photography. I was like, that needs to be expressed within the video. Like,
that should be your profile picture on Instagram.
It should, because I was just like, I'm blown away. I thought I'd reached my limits of photography, and I'm doing it as a job, and like now and again you have your moments, but this took me right back. I was like, I'm loving it. The freedom, the liberation. Let's do this. And how we, like different ways to do this. So I was like, we should use different like camera views. I really want people to feel as if they're with me when I'm out shooting on the streets. We don't want it to be this like, camera from the distance. Let's put the camera on me. Let's strap it on me. Let me move around with it. And let's not even maybe use Fujifilm cameras to make it, because we need these new kind of visual techniques. And they were on board, which was really promising. Looked at new visual storytelling techniques. I was like, we should throw in some black and white, when we want to slow down the pace, pick up the pace, or maybe just when I'm, giving it some noir style. Let's just have fun with it. Let's really grab people's attention. So this was all well received, and the director that I worked with was Chris Turner. So he came back. He went out and did some little test shots, which was using the little Insta360.
Yeah,
this was exactly the kind of things that I was talking. I was like, I want people to be with me. They're in my hand. They're seeing what I'm seeing. So this was a great start to kind of how we were pulling it together as a team. So really, really excited about that. So with kind of all this chaos that I sent them, we chose the destination of Paris. Well, actually, I chose Paris for this video because it's an iconic piece of design. It's a beautiful like camera. And for me, telling the story in a city that's, got a backdrop of just style, and the people are very stylish, so chic. I wanted to go to Paris to tell the story of the X100 I think aesthetically, they just kind of link together for me. And on a very kind of selfish level, I love shooting in Paris. It's so incredible. So that's where we went. And, oops, here's the video.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people have been waiting for this camera, and it's finally here, the Fujifilm X100. I'm Bhatla, also known as Mr. Whisper on the internet, and I'm a professional street photographer based in London. What I love most about street photography is that every single day is a different journey. I love jumping into the bustling parts of the city where it's really thriving, full of people, and a real melting pot of cultures. I best describe my work as looking for very intimate moments between people. For me, what's most important is inviting people into my photography. If people are able to work out my photo instantly, I feel like I've failed to some degree. I'm particularly drawn to shooting at night. It brings a lot more kind of drama and atmosphere to my photos. I find that people are a little less guarded by night. I'm particularly drawn to neon lights because the reflections you're able to get from those add another layer of depth to my imagery. So this camera has the brand new 40 megapixel sensor, which is incredible. It allows me to crop into my images without losing any quality whatsoever. For the first time, this camera has 6 stops of in-body image stabilization, which is essential for low-light street photography. It allows me to use a much slower shutter speed without losing any image quality or getting any shake in my images. The autofocus on the camera is super fast. In particular, I love the face tracking. Yesterday evening, we were out and there was a lady running across the bridge with her umbrella. All I had to do was find her face with the camera and it immediately stuck to her as she ran across the scene. The tilt screen is incredibly handy for me. If I'm shooting low to the ground and I want my camera on the floor, or if I'm shooting from the hip, I'm able to just adjust the screen up and shoot like this, which is incredibly discreet. For me, I was taken back by the image quality. Originally, I was a little bit concerned how the f2 would perform at night, but once I sat down in post, I just saw that everything was like very crystal clear. In today's social media world, it's incredibly important to have a video function on your camera, and having 6.2K in your pocket at all times is going to be great for me to kick out reels, TikToks, and short form video. With all the hype of the predecessor of this camera, I can't wait to see how everyone receives the Fujifilm X100VI. What I really like about it is no fuss. I don't have to think about what lens I'm picking up, grab the camera, and I'm straight out the door for another adventure.
So that was the energy I was talking about. I hope you felt it.
Yeah. I want to have a go myself.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Paris to shoot in the rain is incredible. I tell you.
Yeah.
So yeah, the icing on the cake for this project for me was we headed out to Tokyo for the last part, and this was just like a very kind invitation from Fujifilm. I don't know if they were saying thank you for my hard work, but the ambassadors were taken out to Tokyo for the launch of the X100VI. And at the time, I hadn't been given any feedback whether my photos were being used or not. But on the night, on the day, and the keynote, and the global presentation, as you can see on the left side of the screen, that's my image there that you can see very, very faintly in the background. So that immediately brought a smile. And then as the presentation went on, when we got to the IBIS section, on the big screen, they had another couple of my images. So that was a dream come true for me, because early on in my career, when I worked just with my smartphone, I worked with all the smartphone brands, basically, again, promoting low light, Google, Samsung, you name it, I worked with them. And every time I worked with them, and then I went to their launch, they never used my picture for a launch. So this was like, for me, a very, very key moment or milestone in my career. Yeah. And then a big bonus was I got to meet the designer who designed the X100VI and the XT5. And in this photo, I got him to sign my XT5, meaning it's now worth 10 grand and will never be on eBay. But dream come true. And since then, I have actually replaced the base plate to ensure the signature doesn't run up.
Yeah, nice. Very good.
Cool. So I've got a few more slides about storytelling and photography, or we can go straight into the Q&A. It's up to you, Mark. I just don't want to.
I think we'll go into the Q&A, because I could see. Yeah, I'll tell you what, you can run through it. It's guys. Can you start putting your questions into that box right now, and then as the questions start popping up, I'll start bringing them to you. But if you want to, I don't know if you want to like rush through this bit, or just give us like a sort of overview of your story.
Yeah, I'll give you the highlights.
You give me the highlights, yeah, and I'll wait for the questions to come through for you.
Yeah, I'll try. I do waffle. Sorry, everyone.
That's all right. That way, it's good. It's been really interesting, bro. You came and we've had loads of comments saying
I can't see anything. I'm just talking to my screen for like over an hour. So storytelling through photography plays a really important role in my work, mainly because I don't want, like I said in the video, I don't want people to kind of figure out my images straight away. I want to invite people into my imagery. I want them to be engaged so that they spend a moment and relate, interact, or connect in some way. So that's how storytelling plays a big role. Now, one of the key ways that you can help or employ storytelling within your process is by planning. Now, when people want to start street photography, this is mainly for you guys, maybe even for some experienced people, but the thing that I find that's incredibly helpful is planning. It really helps take the visual noise out. You go out for street photography, you think, I'm going to shoot everything. but with a plan in place, it really helps cut out the visual noise. So the first thing I do is I select a theme, something very simple. Might be a color, might be hats, or it might be a famous landmark, something to keep me focused. Next, I'll be doing some research. This can be 2 minutes, 2 months. That'll be online, scrolling through Instagram, seeing what other people have done on your particular theme, looking at films, exhibitions, whatever floats your boat for research. That should then give you a diverse planning. Oh, this should make you plan your shots. I want them to be diverse and visually appealing. So you've done your research, you've seen what people have done. How are you going to do things differently? How are you going to approach it with your eyes? You know, something that no one else is going to do. So have that list with you so that you know what you're doing. That ultimately brings together a brief, a little assignment. I'm going out, I'm shooting hats, and I've seen that people do a lot of this. So instead, I'm going to shoot it just through reflections, which is your brief, which finally lets you know what gear you're going to use. All right, so I'm going to be shooting this. I'm going to be shooting puddles very close up. Maybe I'm going to need something wide. Maybe I'm going to need something longer. Ultimately, you'll know what gear you need. So one of my favorite storytelling techniques is to evoke emotion. So no matter how technically skilled you are, I feel if your photos lack that emotion, as I was saying, that invitation, they'll lack visual interest. So briefly, the image in the center. So for example, I call this the curiosity gap, and it's something I picked up during my Adland days, and it's about not showing the whole photo. And so with this photo in the middle, the guy smoking, and it would have been very easy for me to go around, shoot him head on, because he was really nicely framed within a shop front. However, taking a few steps to the side, not seeing his face, waiting for him to exhale, having the lovely light bellowing, you know, it's got almost like a rim light on him. That for me made it much more interesting, added a bit of mystery.
It's like Edward Hopper, isn't it? You know, like you create your own story. You know, it's beautiful. I really like that. That middle photo there is really, really nice, and that's what it's just reminded me of. You know, even it doesn't look like one of his paintings, like Edward, but it's got that feeling of there's something going on that you've got to figure out yourself, that you've got to imagine. You know,
exactly. Yes.
Really
I love that. I love that mystery to a photo. So, and then another way that I like to mix up my storytelling is simply by switching up my lenses. And I used to go out with 3 lenses at a time, which would distract me from my game, so to speak. I'd like come to a really cool location, and I'd be questioning which lens to use, waste all my time doing that, as opposed to getting creative on the location. So now what I do is I go out with 1 lens, try and stick with that lens for at least a month. And then, you know, so if I go out with my 16, I go out and I'm shooting environmentals when I want to capture more of that environment.
Yeah.
Like the one on the left, it's Christmas. I want to show Christmas. So let's get out there and get some, you know, as wide as I can.
So you purposely don't put any other lenses in your bag or anything like that. So you just, that's it. You've definitely got to use that lens, you know.
Yeah, I make sure that I buy a bag that's not big enough. That's what I've learned in like recent years, because there's space for an extra lens in there, and I pop one in, and then I'm just like, oh, is this a 33 or is this a 16? Oh, no, wasted. Don't do that, pal. Just leave it at home. So I have a very tight bag, and only if I'm doing commercial work, then I've got them all with me. I never know what I'm going to need, and I'm not going to get a chance to go back. But when I'm doing my thing out on the street, I mean, the one on the left actually is a commercial project. That was a brief for a client who wanted me to go and capture Christmas, and I knew the 16 was going to be the one. Yeah. When I'm like feeling a bit introverted, I'll pull out the 56. It's also it's just my favorite focal length. I think the image quality is sensational on that, coupled with the XT5. So first day in Seoul, you know, I want to kind of do a temperature check on how people are reacting to my camera in their face. So 56 is how I feel comfortable. And, you know, I was able to shoot these guys, get the detail I wanted, all on a lovely cram-packed tube on the Seoul Underground. So yeah, my underground journey continues worldwide. It's my first stop wherever I go. And then 33, I love to use that when I want to get a bit of both. Bit of, I want the detail, but I also want the environment. So that's perfectly situated for that. And then just be original. You see what it's great to start off kind of copying what other people were doing, but like I said, you really should push yourself for trying new things, especially if you're beginning. There are no wrongs. Take really broad strokes. I mean, I'm really enjoying like the kind of noise and like my pictures being more imperfect these days. So, but it's a struggle to explain that to the client. But there's something a bit more artistic to it. But as you do your journey, just keep learning. Personally, I'm doing black and white photography at the moment, really getting into that. I'm trying in-camera recipes so I don't have to do any post-production, and also focusing a lot on video. So constantly learning, constantly being experimental. Got to just keep trying and pushing yourself.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, we have got some questions that have come through, Bal. Yeah. I'll ping them up and I'll have to read. Obviously, you can't see it, so it's down to me to read them to you. This is from Wally James, and he asks, what's a good go-to lens for me to start with my own street photography journey?
Amazing. Cool. Hi, Ollie. Thanks for the question. I would suggest if you're a good length to start with would be a 35mm, I'd say, for the street. And
on a crop sensor camera,
yeah. Is he given a particular brand or
no? He hasn't.
No. Okay, yeah. Then in that case, yeah, I'd definitely say 35's a brilliant starting length. And if you can get something that's like f1.4, then it will work for you at night as well. I mean, comfortably at night, you won't be having light to really put yourself to the test. So yeah. That'd be a great one.
Cool. Here's one that I wanted to ask myself, as a matter of fact. What's the story behind the tag Mr. Whisper?
It's funny you say tag Mr. Whisper, because it is born from my graffiti days. So when I was a graffiti artist, my name was Mr. Whisper. And and then I stopped doing graffiti when I got to art college. And then when social media started, I was like, I don't trust social media. I don't want to put my real name there. So Mr. Whisper came back, and I used it on everything, and it's just stuck as my kind of brand now. So people seem to remember it. I like it. It's
good. It's good to have. That's it. People remember. They remember you, Mr. Whisper, don't they? Of course they do. Yeah. That's from Paul Lewis, by the way. And Paul's also got another question here. He's asking, what dream projects would you like to be involved in the future? Have you got a dream project you'd like to get involved? Companies that you'd like to get involved with?
Yeah, I'm really looking to take my work. Thank you for the question, by the way. It was Paul, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Paul. Yeah, I mean, like I said, constantly learning, evolving. I want to take my street stuff now and potentially make it a bit more contrived. So when I say contrived, I want to do more fashion. So maybe getting into fashion, some fashion projects, or even like I'm a great admirer of, like, obviously the great street photographers, and a lot of them went into doing fashion stuff in their style. So I'm really keen to move into that. So some dream stuff, maybe doing some stuff at Fashion Week, not potentially a dream, but definitely a step and a progress as to where I want to take my next chapter.
Yeah. So mixing the sort of randomness of the street, but with some kind of control.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be really exciting to start building my frames more.
Yeah, cool. Now I've got a question actually. I was wondering, when I was looking at your pictures of the night, they look really clear and crisp. Does your ISO creep up, or does it sort of stay all right?
The way I do that is I have like an ISO law.
Right.
So I just don't go above 3,200.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and that's something I picked up from a Leica ambassador. Actually, he was just like, I have a And he, you know, when he was talking about he goes, I don't care what they do. This is my law, and this is I set to it. And I was like, that was interesting. And then I set myself my own law, and I was like, this works pretty well for. And
So
the way,
in that scenario, then if it starts to creep above that, you would just have a longer shutter speed, would you, and just have to sort of like stay still?
No, I'd walk away. You
just wouldn't do it.
I'd just be like, I think if I have to start pulling things out of the dark and they're not working, and they're not like what my eye's seeing, because the subject tracking on cameras will pick up things that's just like completely in the black. And I take a photo, I'll be like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then there's a person there in the background, and I'm like, if I increase the shadows to 100, I'll see him, but that's not what I was seeing with my eyes. So that little ISO rule helps me keep my photos within the realms of reality or what I'm really seeing.
Yeah. All right, cool. And then do you this is me again, Bal, but do you use that denoise in Lightroom? Do you ever use things like denoise, or that there's a few programs and plugins that you can use to reduce the noise from your pictures, or do you just not bother with that?
No, I do very basic editing. Just like I'm using the basic tools at the top, or I'm not sure whether the
Lightroom, the basic.
I think it's the basic palette, and then I just do some color grading to give it my visual identity. So my reds and my reds, and my blues and my blues, and try to keep it as simple as possible and do as much as I can in camera.
Yeah. All right, cool. We're getting a few other questions coming. They're all coming in at once now. It's because we've got a delay. For anyone watching, I don't actually see when you're typing them in. I must see them about a minute later or something. But there's someone here. They've not got their actual name. It's called Flickering Torch. They call themselves. Which city in the world would you like to visit for the first time for amazing neon opportunity? He says, fantastic talk, by the way, Bal.
I think I know who this is. Flickering Torch. I have a sneaky feeling, but I think when I was doing some research for one of my projects, I heard that Krakow is actually the the neon central hub of Europe.
Right.
So there you go. It's definitely on my list. And previous to that, it was Las Vegas, which I ticked off last November or October.
Yeah. Did it perform as well as you hoped, Las Vegas?
Oh, you know what? I still haven't edited my stuff from there. And I'm so excited to, but it's just been nonstop. But yeah, it did. It did. I'd been there a few years earlier, and it was a bit run down, to be honest. I don't think they polished the lights and stuff. But thankfully, the F1 was coming, so they had to clean up the whole of Vegas. Yeah. And just before all the stands came up, I had an opportunity to shoot everything, particularly the old town, which is just old light bulbs, not like even neons. They used light bulbs for all the things. I was in heaven.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Pretty sure Steve.
Yeah, we've got another question here, and I think we will leave. This will be the last question of the night. Again, it's from Wally James again. Do you ever use flash when you're out at night?
I don't. I've had to use it for a commercial project, but for myself, I don't. And it's definitely something that's on my list. But because and I think that would be something I would do when I start doing my more contrived stuff, because I don't want to surprise people on the street with a flash at night. That's just not my style. But I remember me and you, Mark, we talked about someone who does do that and who does it very well. But I like to kind of keep myself to myself. Don't like much confrontation. Been doing it for over a decade and only had 2 encounters. So, I'm really happy at where I'm at.
Yeah. Good. Right, Bal, that has been a fantastic talk. Really interesting. Some brilliant photographs. I love them. I really, really do. And and I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us all. Let me just put up, just for those people that want to follow Mr. Whisper there it is. There's his details up on the screen right now. The Instagram is Mr. Whisper, and it's www.mrwhisperstudios.com. com there. So go and give him a follow, especially if you like street photography. Really, really cool stuff. Yeah, so put in the comments all your love for Bao there, and you just hang on there, Bao. We're gonna sign off and say thanks for joining us. Have a great evening, and goodbye. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.